think effective communication is good for a company's business?
Communication is really at the heart of a company's business. When you think about it, everything in a company that happens because of communication. I grew up at the start of my career in the mining industry with a company memo, people sending a memo down the line thinking that now they've communicated. And very soon they realized that nothing will happen unless you talk to people. And the difference between communication and information is very important, because information is merely providing facts. It doesn't change minds. It doesn't change behavior. If you really want to have an effect, whether it's in sales, whether it's in productivity, whether it's in safety, whether it's in investment, whether it is in any part of your business, you have to communicate. And that means persuading people to do something differently from what they've done before. And that's the essence of communication. So if you talk about communication in the company, you're talking about the very essence of moving things forward.
How do you distinguish between communicating and marketing?
The difference between communication and marketing is simply an organizational difference. In other words, it's how you organize a part of the communication that you do. Marketing is normally the communication that you do to clients, to consumers, to customers. When you think about applying marketing principles, however, that could be applied throughout the organization. That's why people talk about internal marketing. That's why people talk about marketing in the sense of stakeholders. But of course, the essence of marketing, the prime tool of marketing, is communication. And therefore, the art of communication is very much a function of the business of the company.
Reputation has to be earned. Where does communication come into reputation management?
If you think about reputation, it goes to the heart of the brand. Because a brand is not an ethereal thing. A brand is what people believe it is. In other words, it's the position you occupy in the hearts and minds of all your stakeholders. It's what people say behind your back. And so if you think about reputation as what people say behind your back, the communication that you do to persuade people of the truth, of the essence, of the value of your brand, that's when you really develop a reputation. And of course, we live in the era of authenticity. People have access to so much in terms of electronic media, in terms of personal interaction, especially in Africa. People often make the mistake of thinking that this is a continent where perhaps electronic media doesn't play as big a role as anywhere else. Well, of course, this is a continent where communication, the oral tradition, is really part of the fiber of and the fabric of society. And so communication is a very important part of how Africa develops its perceptions about the authenticity of brands, about the credibility of the people in companies. And that is why reputation is very dependent not only on what you present externally, but also on how you persuade your own people that what you stand for is really true. Because when you think about it, a large organization like Eskom, thousands of people working for it, have thousands of ambassadors going home every night, sitting around campfires, talking around the braai, and talking about the brand of the company. They are brand ambassadors. And if they don't believe anything, if they do not believe that there is an authentic credibility behind the brand, you have no way of persuading other people that it's true. And so it's very, very important. If you're going to talk about reputation, reputation starts at home.
So how is corporate communication today different to the way it was a decade or two ago?
There was a time when corporate communication was really regarded as investor relations. When I started in the industry, one of my first tasks was as an investor relations consultant, because that's what people wanted to do, publish the annual results. Innovation then was someone had the idea that you also might tell your staff what the company's performance was like. Today, corporate communication is a realization that it is at the essence of what a company has to do its business really well. And so corporate communication today is about internal communication, in other words, making the organization more effective. It is about communicating to your consumers and customers, in other words, growing the organization. And it is about communicating to your stakeholders so that you gain influence with them. At the same time, you have to integrate all the messages in the organization. You can't say one thing to customers and a completely different story to your stakeholders or to one part of your stakeholders. You have to be consistent if you're going to be authentic. And then, of course, the important thing is that you have to manage reputation risks. Many companies feel they've done enough in corporate communication when they have a crisis preparedness program. But you know, today it's possible to manage reputation risks so that they become managed out of the environment instead of becoming crises. And so very often, it's more important how sophisticated you are in assessing potential risks. What is the probability? What is the severity? How do you see where these risks are going? What are the trends? So the issue is how you manage risk out of the system. And the important thing there is to get your assessment right. What is the probability of a risk becoming more severe? What is the severity if that risk actually realizes? And then, of course, you have to say, what is the trend? What is the likelihood that this is going to become a serious issue? When you are able to assess risk in a very, very comprehensive and sophisticated way, it becomes possible to manage the most serious risks well before they become crises. So some companies think that by having a crisis management system, they've done the job well. Quite frankly, by the time you need crisis management, you have missed out on the major part of the job. And so what's going to be extremely important is in future, companies will increasingly have to make reputation risk management part of the risk management of the organization. Same as financial risk management, safety and health and all of these things. So when you put all of this together, corporate communication has to move the business strategy of the company forward through communicating to customers and consumers for growth, internally for effectiveness, and to stakeholders for greater influence by managing reputation risks, assessing them and managing them out of the system, and by integrating all of the communication so that you have a very consistent, a very authentic voice moving forward.
Well, you've answered the next question. So, what's the most difficult issue you've had to deal with, and what was your solution?
In the last 20 years that I have been in practice by myself, I have found that anything that involves human life is the most important, the most difficult. Everything else is simply a business problem. But when it involves human life, it really becomes a major, major, major problem. And at the start of my career, I had to deal with mining accidents, the harrowing issue of deaths in the workplace. But perhaps the most harrowing I've had to deal with was when almost 20 babies in a neonatal intensive care unit in the hospital of one of my clients died of the same infection. And he phoned me, they weren't prepared. He phoned me suddenly out of the blue and said, "You don't know me. I run this hospital. I have lawyers and grieving parents and TV cameras on the pavement. Can you help me? I am told by some people who know you that you can."